My brother hit me and abandoned me for 9 years because his wife called me trash. Yesterday they appeared at my oceanfront mansion saying we're moving in. I simply smiled and closed the gate. You ever wonder what it feels like to be completely erased by your own family? To be told, with a fist to your face, that you're trash and don't belong, only for those same people to show up years later, suitcases in hand, wanting to claim a piece of everything you fought to build from nothing? Trust me, the irony isn't lost on me. And what I did next? They never saw it coming. It was a warm Sunday evening in Charleston, South Carolina, 9 years ago. The air hung heavy with the smell of charcoal, cheap beer, and a suffocating layer of fake politeness. My brother Caleb's backyard was buzzing, a typical family barbecue. Cousins catching up, uncles getting loud on light beer, someone charring ribs on the grill and pretending they knew what they were doing. I stood off to the side, plastic cup in hand, nodding, smiling, pretending right along with them. Every year I showed up, secretly hoping this time would be different. That maybe, just maybe, they'd stop treating me like some forgotten dish left on the counter. Then Venus, my sister-in-law, floated over. She had that same, too bright smile, moving through the crowd like she owned the place. And honestly, she pretty much did. "Kale, sweetie," she purred, her manicured hand landing on my shoulder like it was a charitable act. "Still between jobs, huh? Must be nice. All that free time." Her words hit harder than any slap. A few nervous chuckles rippled nearby, just enough to make it sting. Caleb? He just stood there, taking another swig of beer, eyes fixed on the lawn like it owed him money. He said nothing. "Actually, I'm freelancing now," I managed to say, keeping my voice steady, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. "It's flexible. Pays pretty well." Venus tilted her head, a smirk playing on her lips. "Flexible is a nice way of saying living off other people's hard work, don't you think?" Something inside me cracked. Just a little. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Then Caleb finally spoke, his voice surprisingly harsh. "She's got a point, Cale. You're always around when there's free food and good company, but the rest of the year you ghost us." "Ghost us?" I was the one who called. The one who helped Dad fix the deck. The one who lent Caleb money when he and Venus were underwater on their mortgage. I swallowed hard, the bitterness rising. "I never asked for anything," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, come on," Venus chimed in, dismissive. "That's such a martyr thing to say. Just own it. You drift. You show up empty-handed. You're 37 and still figuring it out. The family's tired." The family. As if I wasn't part of it. I looked around. Not one person spoke up. Not Aunt May, who I'd driven 2 hours to pick up from the hospital. Not Uncle Brent, whose lawnmower I'd fixed last summer. They all just stared into their drinks. Then I saw Mom, sitting quietly on the porch, holding something small in her hand. Our eyes met, and she quickly looked away, her expression unreadable. Like she didn't want to be part of this, but wouldn't step in either. My chest tightened, a cold knot of disappointment. I turned back to Venus, ready to say something, anything. But Caleb stepped between us, his eyes glassy, his voice too loud, too aggressive. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" He spat, his face contorted. "Always acting like some sad poet. But you're nothing, Cale. You've always been nothing." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. "Is this really what you think of me?" I asked, my voice cracking, betraying the hurt. Caleb stepped closer, his words like daggers. "Trash like you doesn't belong in my life." And then he swung. His fist connected with my jaw, hard and fast. My cup flew. My knees buckled. I hit the ground. No one moved. For a second, all I could hear was the buzz of cicadas and the violent pounding of my own heart. Blood filled my mouth. I sat up slowly, dazed, and caught sight of Mom again. Still on the porch, still not moving, still not speaking. But in her hand was the object I'd seen earlier, Dad's old pocket watch, cracked, the minute hand stuck. She stood, walked toward me, and without a word, placed it in my palm. Then she turned her back and walked away. It didn't feel like love. It felt like closure. I didn't cry. I didn't fight back. I stood up, shaky, bleeding. And I walked. Not just out of the backyard, not just out of that house, but out of that family. 9 years passed before I ever saw any of them again. And even then, they only came because I had something they wanted. That night, I slept in my truck outside a 24-hour CVS, parked under a flickering light that buzzed like a bad memory. I stared through the windshield until morning, the cold ache in my chest becoming a permanent fixture. 3 weeks later, I packed 2 duffel bags and left Charleston for good. Houston wasn't the plan, just the first place I found cheap rent and a Craigslist ad for warehouse help. I took it. Slept on a mattress on the floor in a studio so small I had to move the trash can just to open the fridge. Nobody knew me there. And that was the point. For the first 2 years, I didn't talk about my family. Not to coworkers, not to the neighbor who always asked if I was okay. I kept my head down, took every extra shift, and tried not to think about birthdays, Thanksgivings, or Christmas lights. But you can only bury things so deep. In the 3rd year, I ended up in the ER on my 34th birthday. Passed out from dehydration, heat stroke, after loading trucks all afternoon. When I came to, the nurse asked if anyone was coming to pick me up. No, I said. I told her I'd call someone, but I didn't. I walked home from that hospital with a prescription in one pocket and a therapy referral in the other. Never filled either. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow. That came later. By year 5, the silence wasn't just painful, it felt personal. Caleb never reached out. Not after I moved, not even after I posted once on Facebook about being in the hospital. Just one like from someone I didn't even know. That's when I wrote the letter. I didn't write to argue, or rehash that night. I just said I missed him. Said I hoped we could talk. Maybe not right away. Just something. I mailed it to his address in Charleston, no return address. It took 3 weeks to get a response, but it wasn't Caleb's handwriting on the envelope. It was Venus's. Inside was a typed letter, cold, precise, clinical. It started, "Cale, your inability to take accountability for the pain you've caused this family is exhausting." She talked about my pattern of victimhood. How I drained people emotionally. How Caleb had moved on. There was one line I remember word for word. "You were never cut off. You just couldn't handle the consequences of your own selfishness." I read it twice, then a 3rd time. At the bottom, no signature from Caleb, just hers. She'd intercepted it. He never saw my letter. That was the moment I realized I could scream into the void forever. No one was coming to pull me out. I stared at that letter for hours, at the way she framed everything like I was some parasite that finally got removed. I tried to tell myself maybe she was protecting him, that maybe he just didn't care enough to ask. But deep down I knew. That night, I stood on the balcony of my 5th-floor apartment, facing a grocery store parking lot, and ripped the letter into pieces. Let them scatter in the wind, like they were never written. Then I went back inside, opened my laptop, and started looking for night classes. Accounting. Business. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew one thing. I was done being the guy who waited for permission to heal. They wanted silence. They'd get it. But not the way they thought. Because silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means permission. Permission to build something without them. Permission to grow without their blessing. Permission to take every ounce of that pain and turn it into fuel. So, I stopped asking questions. Stopped waiting. And I decided if I was going to be alone, I'd at least be powerful. I didn't announce it. I didn't post a quote on social media or buy a journal with "Hustle" on the cover. I just got to work. The day after I tore up Venus's letter, I opened an old laptop someone gave me for $20. It wheezed louder than the AC in my apartment, but it turned on. That was enough. I started watching YouTube videos, coding, JavaScript, Python, whatever looked complicated enough to scare most people off. Then I started over from the beginning. Again and again. I failed every exercise at first. Couldn't make a button do what it was supposed to. Didn't understand how loops worked. But the frustration? It felt better than the silence. I'd load trucks at the shipping yard until 3 a.m., then grab a few hours of sleep, wake up, and go right back to the screen. No girlfriend, no weekend plans, no distractions. Just this voice in the back of my head, hers, saying, "You'll never build anything on your own." That voice followed me like a shadow. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard it. When I finally got my first Hello World program to run, I whispered, "Take that, Venus." 2 years in, I'd built something decent. A simple app for scheduling inventory runs, meant for small warehouses like the one I worked at. I showed it to my boss. He blinked at the screen, scratched his beard, then said, "Did you build this yourself?" That word. Yourself. I nodded. A week later, his brother-in-law, some guy in IT, sent it to a firm in town that did logistics software. They asked to meet. I showed up in a thrift store blazer, nervous and sweating through my undershirt. The guy interviewing me looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He scrolled through my demos silently, then looked up. "You're rough," he said, "but you're real. We can work with that." That was the first time in my adult life someone outside a grocery store cashier called me valuable. They hired me. Junior level, piss-poor base pay. But I didn't care. I remember sitting in that cheap car in their parking lot, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, whispering, "You did it, man. You did it." 6 months in, they bumped me to full-time. I stopped loading trucks. I bought a real desk. I paid off my last payday loan. I still didn't call my brother. Success doesn't fill the hole. It just changes its shape. The following spring, my company sent me to a tech conference in Austin. I almost didn't go. I didn't own a single button-down that didn't have a stain. But my manager said, "It's good exposure. Shake some hands. Eat the free food." So I went. Walking the floor was like stepping into a different planet. Polished booths, people with fancy titles, young CEOs handing out business cards like candy. And then, out of nowhere, someone called my name. "Kyle!" I turned around, half expecting it to be a mistake. It wasn't. It was Dante Marshall. We'd gone to high school together. He used to sit behind me in computer lab, always asking me to fix his login. I hadn't seen him in almost 15 years. "Dante," I said, blinking. "Man, look at you." He grinned. "Look at you. Didn't think I'd see you in a place like this." We grabbed coffee at the corner of the venue, away from the noise. Turns out Dante had gone into venture capital. Co-founded a few startups, now scouting talent for a new AI-focused project. We talked for an hour. I told him a little about my app, about the firm. Not everything, just enough. Then he leaned in and said, "You know, back in high school, I always thought you were too smart to be stuck in that town." I smiled, but didn't say anything. Then he continued, "We're building something. It's early stage. We need someone who understands code, but also understands pain. Real life stuff, not just algorithms." That made me sit up. "Look," he said, "I've got guys with MBAs lining up for this. But they've never been punched in the face by their own family. Never slept in their car. You have. That means you'll think differently." That hit me harder than any job offer ever could. Still, I hesitated. I told him I'd think about it. That night, back at the hotel, I sat in the dark and thought about everything. Charleston. Caleb. The punch. Venus and her cold, calculated letter. You'll never build anything on your own. I opened my laptop, stared at a blank screen. And then I started typing out a plan. I was on a call, pitching our new feature to a group of investors from Singapore, when my assistant knocked lightly and slid her phone in front of me. Just a name on the screen. "Chloe Jacobs, podcast confirmed for 2 p.m. I gave a nod and kept going, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard that click. That small moment when life shifts and you don't realize it until later. The interview was supposed to be light, a casual chat about how a former warehouse guy built an AI logistics tool in a one-bedroom apartment. But somewhere between the fourth and fifth question, she asked, "Do you ever wish your family had been more involved in your rise?" I paused, thought about skipping it, but my throat tightened, and what came out wasn't planned. "Sometimes," I said, my voice quiet. "Family isn't who raised you. It's who respected you." She blinked, jotted something in her notebook, moved on. The next morning, my inbox exploded. I'd forgotten how fast the internet moves when it smells something raw. That quote got clipped, shared, posted on Reels, quoted on TikTok, turned into merch. Someone even messaged me a screenshot of a mug that said, "Respect is thicker than blood. Kale Tyrell." It felt surreal. I was living in a high-rise now, waking up to a view of the San Diego coastline. Marble countertops, smart lights, everything I once thought only existed on TV. And still, most nights I cooked the same way, eggs and toast, even standing up at the stove, like I used to when the power got cut. Money hadn't changed me. But silence? Silence had made me sharper. I didn't party. I didn't flaunt anything. My satisfaction came quietly, watching numbers grow, hearing feedback from clients, seeing employees believe in the thing I'd built. And then it happened. A Tuesday night late. I just finished reviewing updates from the product team, poured myself a glass of water. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I was going to ignore it until I saw the message. "Your brother's not doing so well lately." No greeting, no name, no context. Just that. I stared at it, my thumb hovering. 9 years. Not a call, not a card, not even a "How are you?" And now this. I scrolled up, nothing else in the thread. I checked the number, out-of-state area code. Not saved. But I knew that typing. That clipped, formal phrasing. That cold warmth. It was my mother. I sat down. My heart wasn't racing, just sinking, like a stone dropping in deep water. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the phone face down on the table, stepped out onto the balcony, let the breeze slap my face a little. The city lights flickered below. Somewhere far off, someone was probably laughing, dancing, living without weight. I couldn't tell if the message was concern, guilt, or bait. And that's what gnawed at me. What did they want? Was Caleb dying? Depressed? Broke? Or did they just see my name trending and decide now was the time to pull me back in? Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to scream. But mostly I just stood there, letting the silence stretch until it felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. Because when silence finally breaks, it doesn't whisper. It echoes. For a long time, I trained myself to forget the little boy in me who used to look up to Caleb, who used to hang on every word. For my mom, who just wanted them to be proud. But in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I still wanted it. I still wanted to know they saw me. Not just on a screen. Not just when I was useful. But as a son. As a brother. I sat on the edge of the balcony, elbows on my knees, staring at the ocean, and asked myself out loud, in a voice I barely recognized, "Am I still the kid who just wanted them to love me?" And after I hit send on just 10 words, no punctuation, no warmth, I slid the phone into the drawer and went about my day like nothing had shifted. But something had. That night I barely slept. Not from regret, just friction. Something unsettled, like a window left cracked open during a storm. I told myself it was done. One reply, that's all. No door opened, no forgiveness extended. Then, 3 days later, a knock. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, early afternoon. Sun cutting sharp lines across the tile. I wasn't expecting anyone. Most people had to get past the doorman, the elevator code, the front door, my desk. Whoever it was had help getting up here. I opened the door, and there they were, Caleb and Venus, standing like they belong. He grinned like we'd just seen each other last weekend. "Little bro," he said, arms open like a joke. "You gonna leave me hanging?" I didn't move. Venus stepped in front of him, bright-eyed, polished. Same lipstick shade I remembered from 9 years ago. Kale, wow, you've really made something of yourself. This place is stunning. I stayed quiet, let the silence stretch between us like barbed wire. They waited for an invite in. I didn't give one. Caleb, always the performer, just chuckled and walked past me like he owned the place. Venus followed, heels tapping lightly against the floor. I shut the door slower than I should have. He made a lap around the open living room, eyes everywhere, the windows, the furniture, the art I barely noticed anymore. This view, he said, shaking his head. Man, who would have thought? I didn't answer. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. What are you doing here? Venus took the lead, per usual. We were in the area, needed a little change of scenery. Figured it was time we stopped by. It's been far too long. Has it? I asked, my voice flat. Caleb turned. Come on, man. Don't be like that. Family's family. I almost laughed. Almost. He sat down on the couch like this was his place. Like he'd never laid hands on me. Like he hadn't watched me bleed on the sidewalk and walked away. I could feel it building in my chest. That slow climb. Not rage, not yet. Just pressure. Venus perched on the armrest, all grace and calculation. Things have been a little tight on our end lately, she said, drawing out the words. Nothing dramatic, just, you know how the economy's been. I didn't respond, just watched her lips move. Her earrings sway. She smiled. Anyway, we were thinking, you've got this big space, way more than one person needs. We just need somewhere to crash for a few weeks. Nothing permanent. Just a soft place to land. A pause calculated for family. That word again. I stared at her, then at him. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on knees. Look, I know we've had history, but we're blood. That's got to count for something. And just like that, I saw it clear as glass. They didn't come to apologize. They didn't come to reconnect. They came because they needed something. That's all I ever was to them. A backup plan. Behind them, on the hallway shelf, sat a photo I never took down, an old family barbecue. Me, Caleb, and Dad before the stroke. Caleb had tossed it once, called it garbage. I found it cracked in a box and kept it anyway. I never fixed the frame. Left it broken on purpose. Now, I walked over and picked it up. They watched me. You remember this? I asked. Caleb smiled. Yeah, good times. I nodded. You threw it out. Said it was trash. He shifted. Did I? I don't remember that. Of course he didn't. Venus cleared her throat. We're not trying to stir anything up. We're just trying to move forward together. I placed the photo back. Face down this time. Then I turned around. I need time to think about it, I said. Venus stood. Of course, totally understand. Just a few weeks, Kyle. No pressure. Caleb walked toward the door, giving me a light pat on the shoulder. It's good to see you, man. Really? I didn't flinch, didn't nod, didn't say goodbye. I just closed the door behind them, locked it, and stood there, back pressed to the wood. The apartment felt colder, quieter, but not empty. They'd come all this way to pretend the past never happened. To ask for a piece of the present they never helped build. No apology, no accountability, just expectation. I looked out the window, down to the street below where their Uber waited, and I already knew my answer. I told them I'd think about it, but I already knew. That night, I sat on the balcony with a drink, and the waves, my real family these days, let the cool breeze remind me I built all this brick by brick, alone. I didn't owe anyone anything. I figured that would be the end of it. But the next morning, just after 10 o'clock, I opened the front door to find a mountain of boxes. And right behind them, Caleb and Venus, smiling like they were early to a party I had never invited them to. Hope it's okay, Caleb said, hauling a bag over his shoulder. We figured it'd be easier to just get settled. You said you were thinking about it, so... Venus lifted a medium-sized appliance wrapped in towels. What do you want the air fryer? I didn't speak. Not right away. Because I needed the silence to hold back what was rising in me. But they took that silence as permission, as they always had. Caleb brushed past with a grunt, dropping his duffel just inside the door. Venus followed, setting the air fryer on my kitchen counter like it belonged there. She glanced around, admiring the place. This space really does feel like you. Minimal, sharp, very clean. I stood at the threshold, hands still on the doorknob, and for one stupid second, I thought maybe this was all a test. That they'd turn around, laugh, say, "Just kidding," and leave. But instead, Venus opened a box, pulled out a throw pillow, and asked, "Which room has the best morning light? Caleb gets migraines." By the afternoon, they had spread into 2 guest rooms. Her makeup on the sink, his socks in the laundry. My house slowly becoming not mine. It was like watching mildew grow. They touched things they had no business touching, adjusted the thermostat, rearranged the throw blankets, left grocery bags on the island without asking. And then, during lunch, Venus eyed my protein shake and said, "Still on your clean fuel kick, huh? You know, some real food wouldn't kill you." Caleb laughed like she was hilarious. That evening, I ate alone on the balcony. I didn't need the company. I needed the air. I needed space to think. Because none of this felt like coincidence. They weren't crashing. They were moving in. The next morning, Venus was in the kitchen, wearing one of my hoodies, stirring coffee like she owned the pot. "Good morning," she said too brightly. I opened the fridge. One of my meal prep containers was open, half-eaten. No note. Caleb walked in shirtless, scratching his stomach. "Man, that bed is firm but good. I could sleep for days." "I'd rather you didn't," I muttered. He didn't hear me, or pretended not to. They settled like fog, impossible to grab, but always there. By day 3, my patience had thinned to paper. I kept my routines tight. I worked from my study with the door closed. I left for the gym without saying goodbye. I ate in silence, barely acknowledging the 2 ghosts who now haunted my space. But then came dinner. We were seated around the kitchen island. I'd ordered Thai, enough for 3, though I wasn't sure why. Venus pushed a piece of tofu around her plate, then said, like she was talking to herself, "Some people forget who helped raise them, who kept the lights on when they were too busy dreaming." I paused mid-bite, looked up. Her eyes didn't move from her food. I took a breath and smiled thin, tight. "Well," I said quietly, "some people confuse silence for consent. But not everyone forgets." She met my eyes. Then her smile twitched. Caleb said nothing. He just kept chewing, pretending not to notice the tension thickening like wet cement between us. That night, I walked the hallway before bed, stopped outside the room where they slept. Door cracked open, lights still on. I could hear Venus laughing softly at something Caleb had said, like this was a vacation. I moved on down the hall, past the bookshelf, stopped at the framed photo again. Still cracked, still mine. I stood there a long time, staring at it. That's when it hit me. They weren't family. They were squatters. And if they wouldn't leave on their own, I'd show them out on my terms. The next day, I checked the deed to my house, just to remind myself this was mine. Every inch. Then I printed 2 copies of a guest agreement, sat at the kitchen island, and waited. They came in around noon. Caleb yawning, Venus on her phone. "Morning," she said, like we were roommates, like the past hadn't happened. I slid the documents across the counter, didn't say a word. Caleb raised an eyebrow, picked one up. "What's this?" he asked, trying to laugh, but there was a flicker behind his voice, like he already knew. I kept my tone flat. "Your guests. This outlines what that means." Venus glanced up. Her smile flickered. Caleb skimmed the first page. "Bro, come on. Seriously, legal paperwork?" I didn't respond. Just met his eyes. Waited. He flipped to the second page. "You got a lawyer to write this?" "I did." Venus walked around the island, picked up the second copy. Her silence dragged a beat too long. No alteration to property. No guests without permission. Shared spaces remain under homeowner discretion. She read it like she was tasting something sour. Maximum stay 30 days. She set it down hard. Wow, she muttered. You really think this makes you, what? Better than us? No, I said. It makes me clear. Caleb shook his head, scoffing. This is cold, man. I looked at him. Let the silence stretch. This isn't about cold, I said. It's about respect. Venus leaned in, arms folded. Her voice was sharper now. You know, you walk around here like some self-made king, but you don't even remember who kept you fed when you were 15, who paid your bus fare when you were broke. I remember everything, I said, cutting her off. Which is why this isn't a favor. It's a line. Caleb tried to defuse it. We're family. Families don't do this kind of thing. Families don't move into your house without asking, I replied. He didn't have a comeback. But Venus, she cracked. You think you're above us now? She hissed. You don't even know what he's done for this family. Caleb turned his head fast. Venus, don't. She was already gone. No, she barked. He wants truth. Let's give it to him. Then her voice broke, sharp as shattered glass on tile. He lost our house, Cale. All of it. The room went still. Caleb looked like someone had punched the air out of him. Venus kept going, bitter now, unraveling. Blackjack. Sports bets. Loans. I begged him to stop, but it didn't matter. He kept chasing it, like the next hand was going to fix it. She pointed toward the ceiling. That's why we're here. Not because we missed you. Because we had nowhere else to go. Caleb didn't deny it. He just stood there, staring. I sat back in my chair. Felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy, not anger. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the little brother cleaning up someone else's mess. I felt solid. Grounded. Venus wiped her eyes. She wasn't crying. Not really. Just cornered. You want us to sign your precious little paper? She snapped. Fine. She snatched a pen from the counter, scrawled her name across the bottom, then shoved it toward Caleb. He hesitated, but he signed. Not because he wanted to. Because he didn't have a choice. As they left the kitchen, I stood up and walked to the bookshelf, moved a stack of tech magazines aside. The photo was still there, still cracked, still visible. I didn't fix it. I just made space beside it. Set the signed documents down right next to it. Let them sit together. A broken past and a boundary drawn. They signed it. But the look in their eyes said something else. This isn't over. And I believed them. 3 days passed. Quiet. Tense. They kept their distance, mostly. Stayed polite enough, but every move felt staged. Venus started wearing more makeup around the house. Caleb whistled while he walked past my office, like he was trying too hard to look relaxed. They cooked one night, a big dinner. Told me they were trying to make things right. I didn't touch the food. Later that night, thunder rolled in off the coast. The wind howled through the cracks in the window panes, shaking the glass just enough to feel like the whole place might come apart. Around 2:40 a.m., I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. At first, I thought it was an emergency alert, weather warning maybe. But it wasn't that. It was worse. Dozens of notifications. Missed calls, texts, emails. Then the messages started showing up faster than I could open them. What's going on, man? Is this real? That video of you yelling at a woman, it's trending. Cale, you okay? I blinked at the screen. The words didn't make sense. Then I saw the video. It was choppy. Bad lighting. Obviously taken from security footage. My own security footage. They used my own cameras. In the clip, I was standing in the kitchen, arms raised, not in anger, but mid-explanation, talking firmly, yes, but not yelling. In the edit, though, it sounded like I was screaming. They'd cut in audio of a woman crying. Not real crying, looped fake, just enough to set a tone. The voice sounded like Venus. They even blurred her face, like it was some kind of crime doc on TV. The caption read, "Billionaire tech founder caught on camera in domestic dispute." By 3:15 a.m., the video had hit 2 million views. My body went cold. I sat still for a long time, phone in hand, mind blank. Not rage. Not panic. Just the slow realization. This was it. The play. They couldn't get in through the front door. So now they were trying to burn the house down. But what they didn't know, what they never took the time to consider, was that I'd learned a few things after that break-in at my office last year. Paranoia can be ugly, but it can also be smart. I got up, crossed the house in the dark. The storm outside covered the sound of my steps. Caleb and Venus were still asleep. I didn't look in their room. Instead, I went into my study, opened the drawer. Inside, a black hard drive, small, unmarked. I plugged it into my desktop. The footage was all there. Clean. Uncut. Raw. Every room. Every word. The original audio. No screaming, no crying. Just a tired man setting boundaries in his own home. Then I found it. 1 week prior, the guest room. Venus pacing. Caleb slouched in the corner. Her voice was sharp. "If we cut it right, no one will care. It's fake. We just need him to look angry. That's all." Caleb. "He'll sue us." Venus. "He's too soft. He won't hit back." I saved the clip, added timestamps, labeled every file. Then I called my attorney. By 5 a.m., the originals had been forwarded to legal teams, media contacts, and my publicist. By 6:30 a.m., headlines started shifting. False abuse claim backfires. Tech mogul provides security footage. Extortion attempt caught on tape. The comments rolled in. They tried to ruin him. He played it smart. Always document. Always protect yourself. Respect to the quiet ones who don't flinch. By 9 a.m., Caleb and Venus still hadn't come out of their room. I didn't knock. I sat in the living room instead, coffee in hand, watching the surf hammer the shoreline. My phone buzzed again. It was a text. Unfamiliar number. But I knew who it was. Just one line. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." I didn't answer. There's a difference between making a mistake and drawing blood on purpose. And when someone tries to take everything from you, your work, your reputation, your dignity, there's no going back to breakfast table apologies. I stood up, walked to the hallway, past the photo frame again. Still cracked, still there, deliberately left. Like a scar that doesn't need covering, just acknowledgement. I left it untouched. And just like that, their silence was louder than any apology. After the dust settled, it wasn't noise that filled the house. It was something far heavier. Quiet. Not the kind that aches. Not the silence of waiting. This was different. This was over. Caleb and Venus didn't say goodbye. No note. No phone call. Just gone. I woke up one morning, made coffee like usual, and noticed their door was open. The bed was stripped. A few drawers left halfway out. The air fryer was still there, but everything else gone. They even left behind a half-used bottle of Venus's perfume on the counter. That sweet, artificial scent lingered a little too long. By noon, the gossip blogs had already moved on. Their social accounts went silent. Caleb's profile vanished completely. Venus posted something dramatic 2 days later, a photo of a stormy sky captioned with, "Family is messy, but love remains." I didn't react, didn't repost, didn't text. There was nothing left to salvage. I went for a walk that afternoon, down the hill, past the mailboxes, just to feel the breeze. When I got back, the house looked different. Not because anything had changed, but because something in me had. I walked the hallway slowly, fingertips brushing the wall. The house was still too big for one man, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Just peaceful. In the foyer, that same cracked photo frame still hung where it always had. I paused in front of it. The glass was still split. A diagonal scar right across my younger self's face. The crack caught the light just enough to shine. I could have fixed it months ago, but I didn't. And I still wouldn't. It stays. That night, I opened an envelope that had been sitting on my desk for weeks. I'd avoided it, kept pushing it aside. It was confirmation that the grant I'd submitted in Mom's name had been approved. $100,000 to a local literacy program for single mothers trying to earn their GEDs. She would have liked that. She used to say, "Don't just grow money, grow something that grows people." I sat with that for a while, read the letter twice, folded it back neatly, and placed it next to the photo. Later that week, I hosted dinner. Just a small thing, nothing fancy. 6 people around my dining table, passing roasted vegetables, pouring wine, laughing too loud. There was Mark, the intern I once mentored, who now runs his own nonprofit. He told a story mid-meal, something I'd long forgotten. "You remember that time I was going to quit? Right after my dad passed," he said, setting his fork down. "I walked into your office thinking I was going to be fired. Instead, you gave me 2 weeks' paid and told me to go get right with myself." I looked at him. He smiled. "That saved me, man. Seriously." The table went quiet for a second. Then someone changed the subject, something about politics or some movie remake, but I wasn't in the room anymore. I was somewhere deeper. Because in that moment it hit me. This was the family I chose. Not tied by blood, but by presence, by loyalty, by showing up. It was enough. After dinner, people lingered, refilled glasses, argued over old music, swapped stories. When they finally trickled out around midnight, I walked them to the door one by one. I cleaned up slowly. No rush. Then I poured myself one last drink, turned off the kitchen lights, and stood at the front window. Outside, the ocean was restless, but not angry. The tide crashed in a soft, steady rhythm, almost like breathing. I stood there a while. The house behind me didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a place I had earned. Brick by brick, scar by scar. I sipped my wine and whispered, not to anyone, just to the air in front of me. They thought they could break me, but they only helped me build walls they'll never cross again. I glanced once more toward the hallway where the photo hung crooked, glass cracked, memory unedited. Then I turned away from it and walked back into the quiet. Some endings don't need noise, just the sound of a door finally closing and staying closed. What would you have done when your own family, the ones who hurt you the most, showed up on your doorstep? What's your line in the sand? Let me know in the comments below.